Happy New Year! Welcome back to Broken City Studios. My name's Gannon.
My name's Adam.
This is Adam. All right, so what we got?
Yeah, we got some questions here. Ethan Edge, Ireland. I like this guy. He asked a great question last time, too. So, creation process, period. Where does each piece come from, and how do you figure out what you want it to feel like and mean? You're going to get very different answers from us, I think. So, go ahead.
Well, for me, it's like, usually if I'm with creation, I try to start with inspiration. Like, is it a sound that sets me off? Is it a title, or is it a lick? Is it a riff? And I try to go from an emotional standpoint of how it feels first, and that sets me off. If I sit down and try to contrive that feeling, then the day is usually a waste, because I'll try the whole day to make that into something.
Yeah.
That's okay, because sometimes you learn things from that experience too, and it's good to try things, But I think true inspiration usually happens like you'll have a spark of an idea, and then that tends to, it's almost like you get in a trance. It's like I feel like I'm in a trance, and I just sort of like create something, and after 4 hours I'm like looking at it going, whoa, that was cool. It's like you almost can't explain it because it's just happening, you're in that moment. And I think if you second guess your moment too, I see a lot of guys do this, where they second guess the initial inspiration because they're so worried that other people are going to judge it a certain way, or it's not hooky enough, or whatever the thing is that people are worried about at that time. Depending on the kind of music you're making. If you're making music for yourself, you don't have those same kind of restrictions or pressures. You might have the pressure of like your own self, of like the way you edit, the way you make music,
Yeah.
But
so one of the things I grabbed onto right when you started answering was like, you're talking about like the flow state.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to get into that place where you're unaware of yourself.
Yes, you're not second guessing everything you do.
And usually, I guess, something sparks that, and then you go after it, and then you disappear into it.
Yes.
Is that usually
That's the
like,
best stuff
for you,
for me.
is that like what does that tend to be?
Okay, let's say
I kind of already know the answer to this, knowing you, but...
Yeah. Well, for instance, I was working on Logic yesterday, and I was like doing a program. I had these sounds set up, and I was kind of running through sounds, and one really hit me, and I was like, that's cool. And I started playing some chords, and all of a sudden I was off and running, just from the sound of what it was.
So what, in that, I know this probably changes every time, but in that instance, did the sound remind you of something? Did it appeal to you on a gut level? Were you like, ooh, that's what I've been looking for? What about the sound hit you? Was it something like intellect-wise? Was it emotional? It
was emotional, but it was also, what excited me about it is it made me play a different set of chord changes that I wouldn't normally go to.
Were you aware of why that was?
I think it's just the way it sounded when I hit those chords was really inspirational, and like I hit. And the funny thing is, the sound was designed that whatever you thought you were playing wasn't the actual chord changes. You know what I mean? Like there was a fifth in it or something.
Oh, okay.
There was like some interesting notes in it. So when I hit the chord and then relearned it on bass, I realized I was in a different key. I love stuff like that because I know a lot of chords and stuff because I studied jazz and stuff. So I had the tendency of going head and going, okay, if I do these chords, it'll sound like. Yeah. That's my least favorite way to write. Knowing what something's going to sound like. Yeah. Surprises is my favorite.
That's like the equivalent of tuning your guitar to some random tuning. And then you know the neck, so now the neck is new.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you can do that in music, that you can have some sort of inspirational moment of like you're hearing a chord and it makes you do something, and then the rest of it kind of spins off from there.
That's really cool, man. I used to look at, when I starting out as a drummer, I used to look at like the drummers that used to there's a few guys like Gary Husband put their toms kind of backwards. Yeah. Instead of from high to low, it would be like an 8-inch tom here and a 13-inch here, and I used to look at it and just go like, ugh. Like, used to like
why are you doing
out.
That? Yeah.
And which is, it's almost embarrassing to look back and that I thought that way. Right. I think it's freaking awesome.
Yeah, I get it at the time though. You weren't thinking that way.
I kind of felt like, no, it's like we're all setting up like it's like a piano. Like you don't switch around the piano.
What the hell are you doing?
But it's totally a great way to sort of throw yourself off the track. Yeah. It's like when you go to play, a certain, because you get stuck in these shapes and stuff on certain
especially
instruments.
Especially on guitar, and even on piano, you get stuck in boxes.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, I tend to lead with my right hand, which means I'm going to go around the drums and whatever, and if you switch it up, I think it felt kind of like cheating to me, like a cheating way to play something normal and have it sound abnormal. Yeah. But that's just layer one. I mean, it just changes the way you see the drums. Yeah, and if you're a visual person, you're going to think differently. And you're going to have to be aware that now that's not a lower tom than the first one.
Right.
So
It definitely affects your playing and the way you'll attack a tom or how you use it.
Yeah, but it was cool that what it did is it took you out of your, like you said, out of your head,
Yeah.
away from your technique. It surprised you. Now you had to sort of think more like a composer and less like a master of your craft.
Yeah, like it was less math.
Yeah, less craft, more art, I guess.
Yeah, you're going from the gut. And then the melody was the same way, because the melody, I felt something when I sang. I was like, okay, cool, I'm actually in a moment here.
So cool, man.
Like, it's hard to always get in that state, and that's why, I write a lot, because I want to find that state. It's like improvising.
Yep.
If you improvise every night, there are going to be nights where you don't do new stuff. You're going to be like falling into patterns and things like that. But there are the nights where you don't fall into the pattern, where something magical happens, and you're always searching for that.
Yep. Yeah, I was writing about this recently, about the difference between the past, the present, and the future.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like such a simple thing, but like the easiest place to be is in the past, whether it's like half a second ago, 5 minutes ago, whatever, and then the future is more of a an imaginary state, and it's all about expectations and there's certain, and being actually in the present is something that things like prayer and meditation they're aimed at getting into the present, because the present is really it's the only place that anything ever happens is in the present.
Right.
So like if you're focused, and it can feel like you're in the present when you're actually just slightly in the past, because everything that happens when it becomes a thought, it's a memory now.
Right.
So being in the present, there's like, to truly be in the present is to have no part of yourself in the past or in the future.
Right.
So you're unaware of yourself, and that's that flow state. That's like the definition of flow state, is to be unaware of what you've done and what you're about to do. So in order to get there, you have to have, your technique has to be second nature.
Yep. You have to have the tools, for sure.
You have to have the tools in muscle memory and in soul memory. Like, when it's time to be in the present, you don't have time to be practicing. You don't have time to be second guessing. You don't have time to be, concerned about your choices. Like, that's why being in the present is very much a performance state of mind. In order to be composing in the present, you have to either be in a state of flow where you're working in a way where there's time to somehow document it. That's why, like, both of us love to just turn on the recorder on our phone as we're writing, even in a collaborative thing, and like it's all about like, oh, what did I just do? Were you rolling? Like that happens all the time.
The moment, yeah.
Did you capture that?
Yeah.
And if somebody didn't, it's like, it's gone. Because really, you're trying to get into that flow state, and when you're with another person, it's super hard to get there.
Yep.
Because you have the interactions between people to deal with.
Right.
You're like, you get there for like a half a second, and then you're like, what do you think of that?
Right.
But a great collaboration is when you can you're so comfortable with the person, just like being second nature with your techniques, you're second nature with the person. So you're not worried about being polite, or you're not worried about being overly concerned with what that person thinks of your ideas. So you're not like kind of afraid to let loose. And usually when you're in that
Fear
flow
is a big
state,
part of writing collaborations.
It totally
paralyzing.
is. Let me turn off the AC. It's kind of loud.
I don't know. You guys don't know this, but it's raining really hard, which is awesome. Just a little side note for our podcast.
Yeah, talk about the weather.
El Nino has made it. El Nino. Anyway, that you were saying?
The negative things that happen when you focus on the future tend to be anxiety. You can be paralyzed by it. The positives are, of course, like you're planning ahead, and so you're preparing for things.
Right.
When it comes to the past, the negatives tend to be like things like regret or guilt or depression, things like that. So, and in the present is where everything is. So that's when you feel the most alive. It's when you're not questioning yourself. And if you can focus on the edge of time in that way, almost like you're stretching to reach for something, it kind of focuses all your energy on that task. And that's kind of where you want to be.
Right.
And a lot of the best singers, you really feel like they're so in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
There's no part of their psyche that's focused on like, oh, was that in tune or
Right.
what? They're not worried.
No
They're
fear.
just so focused. Yeah, it's no fear. There's one more piece to that question that I wanted to touch on too. Where does each piece come from, and how do you figure out how you want it to feel like and mean? You touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to dive into that part because it's like, for me personally, as like a artist songwriter, it happens always, and I think it's being open to it happening always, and there's no rules to it, is good. And I think you find the way that works for you more often than not, just by kind of allowing the creative process to sort of happen to you, and realize that it can come from anywhere. There are times when I'm, going through something in life, and I deal with it through songwriting. So I'm like, there's all this stuff that I want to say about this, and there's a feeling I want to get out, and I want to see those thoughts and those feelings, or hear those thoughts and those feelings kind of coming back at me. It's like that's like the therapeutic relationship that I have with music. So it's a way for me to like deal with things that I can't quite express any other way.
Yeah, only with music. Yeah.
And when that happens, man, like it's a weird relationship to have to your own work, but it is really like you listen back to the music and you're like, yeah, I really did feel that. I really was going. It's like validating in some weird way.
Sure, yeah.
It's comforting.
It's real.
Yeah. Another way is that there's that almost excited feeling, like there's something going on in there, and you discover what it is. And that can happen during the process. It can happen after the process.
Sure.
I think with songwriting for me, it tends to happen during the process because, there's lyrics, so like when you're in that form, the, singer-songwriter form, it's something that I play with, where I'll put a fog over the lyrics, where you have to dig into them because I want the music to be the focus, or I want the melody to be the focus.
Yeah.
So playing with that, how direct you are musically and how direct you are lyrically and melodically is those are the cool layers of songwriting you get to play with. Like one of the examples I think of a lot is Tom York in Radiohead. He's not accidentally not enunciating what he's singing. It's a tool he's using to be an instrument, like in he's a good lyricist. And he's not just playing around and throwing down meaningless crap, but he doesn't want it to be like, here is what I'm saying, like he wants you to sort of lean in and maybe not hear what he's saying or not know. Yeah,
decode it, figure it out on your own,
Yeah, they want the listener, I think I can speak for myself, is that there are times when I want the listener to be lost get in a flow state also. Like, so you're kind of guiding them on this journey of this artistic journey where you're guiding their experience with what you're creating. And to get them where you're at, sometimes that means you blur the lines and you want them to not be thinking words, because thinking words is, you're in your frontal cortex, you're in a different part of your brain.
Right.
And music is in a more primitive part of the brain. It's like this emotional side. That's why songs are so interesting, because they appeal to your frontal cortex, and they appeal to that primal lizard brain part. And you get both of those things juxtaposing each other, and you create this really dynamic experience. Like, you can listen to a song and focus on the lyrics, and you can listen to that same song and focus on the music and have a totally different experience.
Yeah.
And when you put both of those experiences together, and the listener's kind of like it's like a tennis match. You're going between the feeling of the music and what it's about. And I love when there's a real, inner relationship between those two things, and playing with that. And that's why you can be a songwriter your whole life, man. It's just it's an endless.
You always
world.
have things to talk about.
There's always things to talk about. There's always a different way to say it. And
who's a kind of a master of what you're talking about, like that sort of blend of like Neil Young. I think of him, like he's a master of like saying something, but it's not, you're not focusing on exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
But you're still getting something from it.
Totally.
It's like he does exactly what you're talking about, where it's like you get sort of this vague idea of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But there's some meaning behind it that you're gathering as you hear it,
Yeah, that's the art of it. There's it's almost like in photography when you're using like a low f-stop. So you use that focal depth with your lyrics. Neil Young, sometimes he'll bring a word into focus, or a line into focus. You'll be like, I know exactly what that means. and he wants the rest of the lines to be out of focus.
Yeah, I love
and he
that.
wants you to focus in on
Yeah.
the music. It's like playing with depth perception in an understanding sense.
Yeah, I guess with lyrics you don't want to. It'd be kind of boring to hear a song that you understood everything that somebody said.
Yeah, and sometimes you need it. Sometimes that's punk rock, or sometimes
That's true.
I remember
I guess
Billy Joel.
It's the style, I guess, huh?
Somebody said that to Billy. I forget who it was, but Billy Joel was frustrated with his own writing style. I remember him saying like, I can't write metaphorically. It just doesn't work for me. Like he's like, he says what it is, and it's kind of in his East Coast sort of like way. Is that like he says what he's thinking and he's direct about it. It's like New York state of mind. Like he's about stuff, things, events. And,
it's true. And you always know what a Billy Joel song's about.
Yeah, and then you have like somebody like Sting who's
very metaphoric,
very metaphoric, and very like it's a big enough umbrella, but it's always me that ends up getting wet. It's like he didn't mean that literally.
Right.
It's
a great line though.
It's a great line. Yeah, he puts it.
He likes to use it in every song.
I know. I was just actually talking to Mike today about I'm finishing up my record, and I put the title of one song as a lyric in the other. Yeah, and that was like I did it because I fell upon the meaning of it, but then I was like, oh, that's something Stig did.
Yeah.
So, taking some more questions. Let's see here. Next question we got. This is from Dario Prieto Asorno. Hopefully I was saying your name right. How do you play your songs on drums? Do you think about it, or do you play different rhythms, and after that you choose one of them? Songs like Turn the Key, 1621, Would Be a Loser, and more. So this is about kind of some of my solo records. This happens all sorts of ways. I can't think of a way that I haven't tried or done it. One of the ways I do it the most, I think, with my songs is I write the song. Usually I'll write, like, at the minimum, the verse and chorus, or a little more than that. And then since I'm sitting here in the studio writing, I want to start hearing or creating the sonic landscape and sort of producing as we go. That's what we do together a lot, too. And being a drummer, like, I tend to think of drums really early in the process. So I'll kind of organically, as I'm writing, know what groove I'll want, or whether or not I want drums, and how I want the drums to sound and stuff. So, and in those kind of cases, I'll often go in. So this is probably the main way I do it. Is I'll go in and I'll have the song in my head, and I'll do a full drum take, playing the song in my head, and just to a click track. So I won't lay down any scratch things or anything. Like, I want that kind of mental connection to what I'm doing. I don't want to play to any fake tracks that aren't going to be there later or whatever. Like, I kind of just, I don't like that for some reason. I like to just hear it in my head. So
I'm always kind of amazed at how much you memorize of a song. Like, even when it's new, you just go in there and you start recording, and it's like, you know where all the sections are, and all the, like all the turnarounds and stuff like that. You have good memory for that.
Yeah, I love doing it. I mean, part of that is from how much I've done this, just kind of mapping out a song and seeing it kind of from a kind of like a mental visionary point of view. Like seeing the song at a distance and going like, okay, here's the arc of the song, here's how many bars each section are, here's kind of where the emotion's coming from, so I kind of know where I'm going to grow the dynamics and build it on the drums. I remember honing that craft because I used to play in clubs on drums where I'd be playing to a click track because we'd play to tracks, and I could barely hear the band, so I had to like really know what the song was doing in order to play musically in that context, because I was hearing a super loud click and just bass rumble, almost no vocals, and I had to sort of imagine what the world was hearing
it's kind of crazy.
And play musically. That helped hone that craft. But that's kind of the main way I do it, and then usually at that point I like to, since a bridge in songwriting, you kind of want it to be a departure from the rest of the song. So sometimes I'll record 1, 2, or 3 different versions of what the bridge might be, and let the drums kind of lead. And often I'll improvise certain rhythmic things and let that fuel the songwriting that's going to occur later. That happens a lot with us. Is
Yeah.
I'll just play a groove in the bridge, and it's like, this bridge is going to be rooted on that beat.
Yeah.
Let's just do that.
It helps though, because bridges are always kind of difficult sometimes, because
Yeah.
to make a really good bridge is not easy.
Yeah, it helps to sort of change instruments for the bridge. Like, if you're writing all day on guitar, go to the piano for the bridge, or
Yeah,
let somebody else kind of lead the way, or if it's a collaboration.
sure, yeah.
And then one of the other ways, drum-wise, that I'll do it is sometimes I'll just start with the drums and just lay down a groove that's inspiring, you know, in the same way that like a synth patch might be inspiring, like let the attitude of a groove lead me. In one case, like a song on my new record, that's a song that I had half finished, where there was a full drum performance with an unwritten song, and then I went back like 2 months later, pulled it up and got new inspiration. There's a thing kind of going on in my life right now that I was like, ooh, this is going to be the foundation of that.
Right.
And so I went into it with that, with the drums and this like piano chord sequence going, and wrote a new chorus and built from there. And then, like, after a day and a half of honing the song in and producing it, and I had done the vocal, I all of a sudden was like, oh, I don't know if I dig this.
Right.
And I was like kind of bummed, because it was going in the right direction, and I just sort of woke up and in the middle of working on it went like, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I was bummed, and I think I left the studio and came back, and then I was like, okay, something's wrong, and it's not the song.
Right.
And what I realized is that I muted the drums and listened to the song, and I was like, there's the song. And I was like, frick, there you go. The drums weren't actually... The drums didn't inspire the song. They sort of were a pushing off point from the song, and they actually needed to go away in order to reveal what the song had become.
Right, right.
It's really weird. So
That song's interesting too, because, like, I think you probably already said this a second ago, but you wrote the chords and the drums and everything differently at a different time than you wrote the lyrics.
yeah.
So it's different emotional feelings on both ends.
It was. So something had to go.
That's pretty cool. I like that perspective of sometimes coming at a track without knowing what you were going to do with it initially. It was like you're almost top-lining your own song.
Yeah, that's what it became. Because the early song was called God, and it was going to be, the concept was sort of trying to put yourself in God's perspective, like how, looking at how small our perspective is. And I very quickly realized that that's of course impossible and slightly douchey to even attempt it.
Yeah.
But at first, when I was like in the bubble of thinking of that song, it just felt like a really interesting thing.
Yeah, that's where you felt it.
And it was more of just like a thought that's worth thinking than for me a song that was worth writing.
Right, right.
Just felt like, oh, you mean the impossible task of writing that song? No.
God's perspective.
And I just sort of shut it down, and then when I came back to that part, it felt inspiring and stuff. And really, it was very much the drummer in me doing a performance without a song.
Right.
So what I ended up doing in the end is I muted the drums, and I was like, oh, there's the song, and kept the piano. And from there, it was like instantly I knew that instead of the song being this thing where it's really the drums are like owning a lot of the sonic space, it became the opposite, where it was very tight, and it was about the bass and the vocal, and I used the drums on just the end of the last chorus and the outro. So it almost like the song was building to the drums being part of the peak.
Right.
So it ended up just inhabiting like 30 seconds of the song. But
that's cool though.
I used them, but
yeah, so it's like almost like an effect. In a way.
Yeah, it was almost like an effect, and sort of this. What started out as the foundation actually just ended up being like a couple shingles on the roof.
Right.
And then, so that's one way that I do it. And then, in Turn the Key, that was a song that's from my album Way Out, and that album was a turning point in my creative process of really super from the inside and not from habits, and really from accepting kind of what music was inside me that day, and like trying to leave everything else out of it, get into the present moment. A lot of what we were talking about earlier. So a lot of that record came from trying to hear the music that was in my head and get it out. And Turn the Key was one of those things where I sat down at the piano and sort of listened to what was in me, just like let something come out. Almost like a version of when psychologists use those ink blots.
Yeah.
There's a name for that test, but they just show you an ink blot, and then you just blurt out a word.
What do you see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, like that album was like, okay, here I am today, right now. What music is in my head? And I'll just let that be my pushing off point.
Yeah.
and inevitably, that's when a lot of those songs, the meaning of them, I like realized what I was writing about halfway through,
Right.
or even sometimes later. Most of the songs on that record were like that because of that sort of inkblot style of just listening.
I think it's kind of cool, though. I like that kind of writing, too.
Yeah, it's very
where the
free.
message gets brought to you after the fact.
Yeah,
Like, what was I talking about?
you're really fishing in your subconscious. You're like dropping your hook down into an area of yourself
Unfiltered.
that you're not seeing, and then you just like, oh, I got a bite. I don't know what fish this is.
Yeah.
And it gets revealed to you. And so in that case, I let the song inspire the drums, and then the drums inspired the song, and it kind of went back and forth because there's a lot of like adventurous drumming on that song. So it kind of played back and forth. The song was being written, I recorded the drums fueled the song. And then 16 and 21, that was a case of actually the drums, me using the drums almost like building a collage from pre-existing drums and writing around them. Mm-hmm. And that was a case where it actually worked.
Yeah.
Whereas on this recent song, it didn't work, but it was a springboard. In that song, that drum track came from something else that we didn't use, or that I didn't use. You know, I chopped it up and was just willing to let that part of the song be a collage. That's the great thing about the digital age is you can write do whatever you got to do to get it out.
Just tools.
Yeah, it's just tools.
I believe in the 70s they would have done that in a second.
Yeah. It's just now you get people that you experience music that I think gets gratuitously edited where you can feel that the technology is sort of overly driving the content and it feels a little empty, or it's all in the eye of the beholder, but I think it's way easier now to fake it than obviously in the 70s. So
you had to sing every chorus.
Yeah, if you're going to use those tools, I think there's a super big responsibility to use them in a way that's true. Like you're expressing your truth. You're not just like taking the lazy way out and cut and pasting the chorus like you just said.
Yeah.
Like that to me is like, if you want the choruses to truly sound exactly the same, if that's what you want to say, by all means do it. But taking that pause and going like, all right, is that cutting a corner? Because it's so easy to just chop, cut, paste. And I think there's the stuff that we're the most proud of that we've done together, and certainly that I've done on my own, has been when you're like, okay, if I want to cut that corner, that means I need to either take a break or come back to this song, because like it just means that there's some part of me that's losing energy or isn't inspired, or but we've everybody's cut that corner, but it's always.
It also depends on the singer you're working with.
If
that singer can barely sing that chorus and you got it, that's being cut and pasted everywhere.
It's the sad truth sometimes.
That's the truth, man.
Yeah.
You gotta get paid. Like totally the antithesis of this whole conversation.
No, but it's, dude, I mean, sometimes
you just gotta do what
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
But you have to go, I mean, I think you're blowing it if you don't at least give yourself that, like, is it worth doing again?
Well, you can always add new things to it, too. If you have a chorus, you could embellish it some way, or...
Yeah, but in the case that you're saying, which is very real, it's like you're being forced to deliver.
Yeah, your limitations are forcing you to deliver a certain thing.
You're being pushed by the demands of your job to get it done. So, like, God knows that if you're somebody who's, like, building a brick wall that's 100 feet long, if you could build 50 of it, and then cut and paste the second 50 and not have to build that same wall brick by brick, you do it in a second.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, when you're in the professional music business, sometimes you're forced to do that because of the limitation.
Time restraints,
whatever it is. A lot of times in writing sessions, you do that just as a way of getting through it.
Yeah, because the artist or the person you're writing with can only be there for a certain amount of time, or even the artist.
Yeah.
And they don't want to sing a whole... But sometimes those demos end up being the record.
Right.
So you're kind of stuck with what you got.
In some cases you are, in some cases you have to go like, all right,
let's get back together.
Let's make this real.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You can always change it. Depends on the band and the artist you're working with.
Mm-hmm. And it depends on what layer of the production it is.
Right.
Are you cutting and pasting the drums? Are you cutting and pasting, guitars? What are you...
Sure.
What are you doing, and how much does that part matter, and how much life do you want in that? And like...
Right.
In that song I was mentioning earlier... From Here You're on Your Own is what it's called. That song is built around just like a 4 on the floor kick. because I'd taken out the performance, and after I'd taken out the drum performance and just put it at the end, and wrote the song and performed it all, like there was something dry about it. Like I was stoked that the song worked out, so like I was kind of like, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is great.
But
like,
you weren't.
I wasn't. I came back the next day and I'm like, it's not done. And I had to go through on the layer of the rhythm track, and like there was life missing down there. And so I went in and did a performance of like some percussion stuff, and even though it was like very subtle, it, like suddenly the song came alive in a certain way that it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's almost like I had gone too extreme by muting the drums. I needed to bring back some performance.
Some life to it, yeah.
Yeah. So it happens all sorts of ways. That's a really, really good question. Sometimes you need to be a purist. Sometimes you need to be a collage artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all about what your intent is. Okay, a few more quick questions before we're out of here. Chavez George, I think, is 702 from Instagram. Not sure if anyone has asked you yet, but what is your main inspiration when it comes to writing songs? This is from my, I think, personal Instagram, but we'll both answer.
Okay.
I would say my main inspiration is the tension between thought and emotion. Like, to me, those two things are chicken and the egg, what came first.
Right.
Stuff. Like, do I feel something and think about it, or do I think something and feel about it? Or is it just the chemicals in my body that day? And then how those two parts of the experience, the psychological and basically the two parts of the psychological, and then also a lot of times the spiritual. So that triangle of feeling, thought, and then spirituality. You throw something in the middle of that triangle, that Bermuda Triangle of spirituality, thought, and emotion. That's my main place. I mean, what would you say your main inspiration for music is?
I'm kind of
Puck as a solo artist.
As a solo artist?
You're very much in like a...
I'm impulsive, even as a solo artist. So if I'm impulsive, then I'll go in the moment, how I feel in that moment.
Yeah.
I'll just start whatever is inspiring me in that moment. Sometimes when you're like writing stuff for yourself, you really have to be in that frame of mind.
That's cool.
Because you can't really force that.
You're trying to, like, really about getting into the now, like you said earlier.
Yeah, it's just like, how am I feeling in this moment? What can I express? And then having something to show for it 4 hours or 5 hours later, or weeks later, depending on what you do.
Instant gratification.
That's totally, yeah, it's like you get this gratifying experience. Sometimes the experience is more gratifying than the financial reward. Sometimes you get no reward, except that you wrote the song.
Yeah.
But that's cool, too. Like, I made a whole solo album of guitar instrumental music that sold very few copies, if any. I mean, I don't know what it sold. 10 copies or something. Who knows?
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter really, but the experience of doing it, and I paid like a lot of money. I hired like Simon Phillips, and I hired all these like star musicians and people
who all was on that record? Simon Phillips,
Tony Levin was on it. Pat Mostoletto from King Crimson was on it. Rudy Sarzo from Quiet Riot and Ozzy. You know what I tried to do is
Taylor Hawkins
was on there. Jimmy Chamberlain, Nate Wood. Yeah, I had a lot of great musicians on it, but I was trying to like gather. That album was a reflection on my influences in my past. Mm-hmm. I was looking backwards a little bit on that record and trying to come up with something that felt like that feeling, you know.
That record's called Not From Here.
Not From Here, yeah. I wish I would have picked a different font for the record. It's got that lame font, but, you know, whatever.
Hey, man.
I wasn't into graphic design at the time. But the actual music on it, I'm proud of. It's like it definitely took forever to make it because I was doing lots of different things at the same time.
It's worth it, man. I mean,
It lives on.
It lives on.
You know. And the DVD was sort of a similar experience where I made this DVD where we had all these. I think I talked about it before in the podcast, but
I don't think you did.
Oh, maybe I haven't. Anyways, I made this DVD. I had this idea, and I met Don Lombardi at DW, and I said, "Wouldn't it be cool to have some of my favorite drummers on a DVD, and then have them all play the same song and see their approach, and then make them play other songs that I had written?" He loved it because he didn't have to get copyright. You know, he didn't have to pay for copyrights or like had to license anything. But he also licensed. He liked the idea too. It wasn't just a business thing, but he goes, "I'll tell you what. If you can get somebody on board of this crazy idea, then I'll fund it." So I called up a couple friends. I called Jimmy Chamberlain. He said, yeah. I called the people I knew I'd probably get yes right away. Uh-huh. So I called Jimmy first, and he was down. Jimmy's cool. He's always down to do stuff. Then I called Taylor.
Jimmy's from Smashing Pumpkins, for those who don't know.
Yeah. And then Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters. He was down. He was cool. Once I had them, then it was easier to get the rest.
Yep.
Because I had two well-known drummers. And I got Simon Phillips, he was totally down. We had just played a gig together in Chicago, so like we had a good rapport.
That gig's on YouTube, right?
Yeah, with Jeff Berlin. That was a fun gig. So that we did that at it was for another drum thing. Vic, what was his name? That doesn't matter. Look it up on YouTube if you want.
Yeah,
to check
Simon
it out.
Phillips, Gannon Arnold,
And Jeff Berlin.
Jeff Berlin. You play a ripping solo on that.
Oh, thanks.
And then you had Terry Bozzio.
Terry Bozzio. That was a dream for me because I love Terry's approach on drums.
Yeah.
I like his artistic viewpoint on drums, and I love the way he played with Frank Zappa. So
Yeah,
and Jeff Beck.
He's very compositional.
Yeah, he's just cool. He's a cool guy too, and so it was really fun to be with an artist drummer. His artistry came shining through, you know.
Yeah.
And he kind of had to play back to sort of normal drumming in a way. Not to say that he doesn't play normal drums, but mainly he does compositional drumming.
Right.
So he kind of just went back to playing grooves and beats and stuff, which was cool.
Yeah.
And then Gary Novak, who was killer.
Yeah.
So it was a great cast of musicians, you know. And that was another product that didn't like sell a lot, but I'm really proud of the result because it was unique. That was unique. There's nobody has done that yet.
That was really cool to see.
That was thanks. I'm really proud of that DVD. You can get it. It's called Gannon Arnold 5 World Class Drummers, but
Yeah, it's at, I think, Guitar Center and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool to see different guy. He played the song at different tempos and slightly different feels.
Changed them up.
And yeah, everybody brought their thing to it.
Taylor was a trio, and then I had with Jimmy Chamberlain, I brought in a keyboardist. I tried to make it interesting across the board, so it wasn't always the same kind of configuration.
Yeah, I love that thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Check it out. So, to answer the question, your main inspiration is just going after whatever you want. You
Whatever's
feel
in the moment, yeah. It's like the moment is everything. And the same with writing with other people in collaboration. Don't be afraid to like be in the moment, and don't be afraid to voice your opinion and your feelings and your melodies. I think a lot of people get in the corner and they kind of just sit there and I don't do anything.
Dude,
It's like,
yeah,
don't be afraid.
it's hard. Vulnerability is really, when you're in, no matter what process you're in, whether it's collaboration or on your own, vulnerability is like a key factor in, I don't know, I think creating work of value.
Yeah.
And I think one of the hardest things to do in collaborations, especially if it's with people you don't know very well, is to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
Like the thing that bums me out the most, which we've all been there. If you're like a songwriter that's going around doing co-writes and stuff, is like it's hard to be vulnerable, and you end up writing a song about the idea of what a song should be about. Like
Right.
you're like, let's write a love song about this, and you just immediately are like fighting against cliches because nobody really has to like, nobody's face is going on this song.
Yeah.
Nobody has to like own up to these words you're saying, so it's like you end up like, well, what would I say if I felt that way? Like,
Right.
it's all just like theoretical, like hypothetical land.
Funny language.
Yeah,
like
you write
quirky language.
Yeah, and then you end up coming up with a song, and you're like, I can't believe we came up with a song that none of us were invested in. like it's so much better when somebody in the room,
Going through something.
yeah, you like get onto something real, and get into a land of vulnerability, and then everybody's in support of that or
Right.
can connect to it in some way. Because I really believe your audience isn't going to connect unless you've connected, unless you've
some element of truth.
unless you've truly emoted into what you're creating. It's not going to cause emotion in somebody else
Right.
in any real way, I don't think.
Right.
I mean, that you could refute that, but I think the most powerful music is real music. Like
For sure. I mean, the stuff that tends to be plastic only has a shelf life of a very short period of time.
yeah,
Like, if you want to be my lover, good example. It's like it was a huge hit, but it had a really fast shelf life, and nobody wants to hear that song ever again. But a song like Hello or something like that has a little bit more depth, a little more meaning, can go on forever. And there's pop songs that do that too. There's some good ones, like Latch by Disclosure is very good. There's some good stuff out there that has some feeling and real emotion to it. I feel like right now it's cool I hate to use the word trend, but music is shifting into like an R&B place a little bit. So the emotion, you're feeling more emotive kind of like melodies and not so like manufactured. There's a lot more kind of people just singing and feeling things,
things are cycling so fast because of the internet that
Yeah, there's no one thing, but
You
it's like,
can't-
I feel that a little bit.
I think people are finding out that if you chase something that's on
You're
the
dead.
charts now, it takes months to get to the charts, and by then what's popular, like the sound and style of what's popular, has already changed. So it becomes this impossible task. People are just like, I think they're forced to take risks and take chances, and you're starting to see that manifest on the charts. Like there's,
Yeah. Be eccentric, try things, and if you're going to do program music, be eccentric. Try things that are outside and kind of weird, because I think that stuff stands out. If there's some weirdness in your track, not to say deliberate weirdness, but don't be afraid to do something interesting.
Just follow your instincts,
yeah.
Because if you follow what you love, regardless of whether or not it's popular now, you might be the one that defines the future of pop music.
Totally.
Or not.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, if
at least you're doing your thing.
At least you're doing your thing.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of being original right now is really important. I mean, in every idiom, doesn't matter what you're in. If you're playing jazz, you got to be original, because there's already somebody doing the thing that you want to be faking.
Yeah.
There's already a great guitar player that plays like your favorite guy. It's him. So don't be him again.
Yep. It's just, I mean,
it's okay to listen.
The distance between what you're looking for and getting what you're looking for is like there's almost no distance.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can Google, people can find the real version just as quickly as the fake version. So
right.
The fake version has no value.
Yeah, it's totally true, man.
Or very little value. I mean, if you're gonna do a cover, do the cover your way.
Yeah.
Those
ones always stand out anyway.
Write your own song. But if you're driven to do a cover, it's like really give it what you have to give. Like be a performance artist in that case. Do it
your way.
Do it your way. So we had two more quick questions
okay.
that'll be answered at the speed of light.
All right.
Because I'm not sure they're really deep.
They're deep.
One was my computer actually just died, but I remember the question, but I don't remember what the name of the person was, so sorry about that. But it was, what is Colton Dixon's favorite drink?
I don't actually know what he likes.
I do know that he's got a major sweet tooth.
Yeah.
So if you just took water and poured sugar in it,
Mountain Dew maybe?
He might be cool.
He had his face on Mountain Dew.
That's true.
So I think he likes Mountain Dew. Sugary drinks.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
I don't even know why we're answering that question.
That's a good question. Why not?
So, and then the other one, even more legit, was how do you make a good cup of pressed coffee?
I don't know. You're the man of pressed coffee.
I asked for it because I said, ask any question, anything. So we're being trolled a little bit on that one, but I'm going to answer it anyway. First, you use Storyville coffee, because it's the best coffee on the planet that I drink
Not
every
Starbucks.
day. Shout out to Storyville.
Thanks for all the people that check in and watch us. Really appreciate it. And we'll be doing a new one next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Broken City out. Out. Broken City out. Out.
Ringing sound, poison rain, don't come around here again. I will cover you, you will feel no pain. Wait for the blue sky again. Did it for the money, babe, did it for the green. Then my luck ran out, lost my sanity. Now I'm here today, wanna testify. Don't do it for the money, babe, 'cause the money's gonna lie. Ringing sound, poison rain.